Hi everybody, this is Maureen Wong from mycasestudies.blogspot.com. Today we're making this what I call a surprise easel card, and I think I made this up a long time ago, but if I didn't, I'm sorry. But what it is the barn is on an easel mechanism. You can see that from the side, how it lifts up and stands up. And then the surprise is this little flap that holds it in place instead of, just putting something on the bottom of the card that holds it in place. So it actually holds it from the side, there you can see, and it makes a little bit of interesting design element because it's like a layer of grass in front of the barn. So you can see that there. So let's get started. Okay, I've sped up the video because it was taking kind of a long time, and I also did some of the assembly ahead of time to save more time. So what I did was I'm using the whole herd set from Bertie Brown, and that's from My Favorite Things, and I've gone ahead and stamped all of those images in VersaFine Onyx Black ink and then embossed with clear embossing powder. I watercolored them so the clear embossing powder helps keep the color in the lines, especially if you're doing a real quick and sloppy job like I tend to do sometimes. So these are the different images that I used, and after I colored them, I cut them all out. Now I used the barn dynamics and I cut the barn portion from black cardstock. I saved the inside and I taped them all in place so that it would be one sort of semi-solid piece. And then I went ahead and cut it out of red as well. And then I cut the trim pieces out of white and adhered them. So this is the front of my barn and that's the back of my barn. Then I've got my easel mechanism, which is a piece of cardstock that is 2 inches by 4 inches, and I scored it at 1 inch and 2.5 inches, and that's basically what turns the barn into an easel. Because I'm not using the normal easel method of using the whole card front as an easel, so that's what I came up with. And then the surprise stopper mechanism is just a scrap of cardstock, and I scored it at 1/2 inch to make the stopper bit, and then I adhered a little bit of grass cut with the Grassy Fields Dynamics from MFT, cut out of MFT's polka dot paper, and stuck that onto the mechanism. And let's see, I just left the bottom white part blank because it's going to be behind the green grass paper. And I cut both of those pieces with the large stitch rectangle from Blueprints 13 to get them to that size that I wanted and give it the little extra interest with the stitching detail. So what I'm going to do now is start assembly of the card, and it's going to take me just a second to figure out what I want to start with, and it's not going to actually be the barn, it's going to be the easel mechanism. So I'm putting adhesive on just that top part of the easel mechanism for now, and I'm going to adhere it. And what you want to make sure is that the bottom of that mechanism doesn't extend below the edge of that green grass paper. I'm putting my barn on a little bit above the edge, so I'm putting on my mechanism also, so the end is a little bit above the edge. I didn't want it sitting right on the edge of my card here. Now I'm going to put adhesive on just that bottom section of the easel mechanism, and I'm going to stick my barn on. But first I noticed that it looks a little bit crooked, so I'm going to very, very carefully lift that off, trying not to ruin my pattern paper piece. And I'm going to try and make that just a little bit straighter there. And then I'm going to attach my barn to the easel mechanism, lining up the bottom of the barn with the bottom of the mechanism and testing and make sure it works. And yes, it does work, and that's how I want it. So now I'm going to attach the pattern paper to the back of the card, and what I'm going to do is trim the grass paper right below the mechanism, the easel mechanism, with my paper trimmer, and I'll show you why I'm doing that in just a second here after I put away my trimmer. It's because I want to hide the white portion of my stopper surprise mechanism, so I'm going to hide it behind the bottom of that grassy portion of pattern paper, just like so. So what I'm going to do is, and by the way, when I do those air quotes, it's because I keep saying grass paper. It's not really grass, obviously, so for some reason I felt the need to do air quotes. Anyway, I lined up my pieces where I want them, and I left the bottom one in place to show me where the top one is supposed to go, putting adhesive on that top panel and then lining it up with the bottom, and it should go where I wanted it to go. And then I'm going to take my stopper piece and make sure you don't adhere that little ½ inch section at the top. Just put the adhesive on the bottom half of the mechanism, and you don't need a ton of adhesive there. And then I'm going to just shove that straight edge right up against my paper line and make sure that it's straight and lined up and stuck down very nicely, and that it does go flat. And then finally I'm going to take that last bit of pattern paper, which is the supposed grass, and line that up with the bottom of the polka dot paper. And so you can see how the stopper mechanism is covered up, and that's how your card looks at this point. You can sort of see the grass, polka dot grass underneath, but it's so subtle you can barely tell, and it doesn't make much of a difference at all, but you can see it makes a really nice stopper mechanism for the easel barn. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is start assembling my barn, and I'm going to get out my big hunkin' roll of foam tape because I want to pop up the front of the barn on top of the back of the barn for some dimension. So I'm just taking some foam tape and putting it out on the side. Make sure you don't cover up the window portion of the barn or the doors. And so I'm putting the foam tape on either side. And I was going to do a double layer there, but I decided not to do a double layer since the barn is going to be an easel. I didn't want to make it too fat. So I'm putting some more foam tape up at the top to hold the roof portion. And then I'm going to stick my pig inside the back of the barn, just flat, so that when you open the barn doors, there he is. And now I need one more piece of foam tape underneath the window just to make sure that whole front of the barn stays nicely flat and popped up from the back portion of the barn. And sorry I poked my head into the shot there, but I wanted to absolutely make sure that it was lined up perfectly front and back. And there we go. So I press it down and make sure that the door is open, and you can see little Mr. Piggy in there. And now I'm going to attach the little nest. I'm using matte medium, and I have a little needle nose glue bottle that I put my matte medium in, and it's just a great glue for tiny little things like this nest. And I also used it on those small trim pieces. It's great because it dries matte, so it doesn't leave shiny marks wherever you get glue in places where you don't want it. And the needle nose tip really helps. I get it in this big bottle, and then I use a syringe to fill up the little bottle, so I have that needle nose tip. And now I'm just going to play with it a little bit and see where I want the different pieces to go. And my cow is a little bit too big to fit on the side of the barn because then he would stop the door from opening up. So I'm going to attach my chicken to that left side of the barn, making sure he's not in the way of the door. And I'm going to just glue the chick straight down to the barn, because he's supposed to be small, so he doesn't have a lot of dimension. And then I had this great idea to put my cow as part of my stopper in front of the barn door so that he's an extra surprise when you open up the card and put the barn easel in place. You now have a cow in front of the barn. But that's actually not going to work. So let me skip ahead a bit. Okay, so you can see I ripped the cow out of the middle because the card would not close with the cow stuck down where I had it, because the easel mechanism would hit him. So I'd have to fold it forward, and that's just not how I wanted my mechanism to be. So I saved my cow because I went through all the trouble of making him. He doesn't really fit any place else on the card, so I'm going to use him on the inside of the card and decorate the inside of my card for once. Unfortunately, where I ripped him off, I have this blank space that I have to fix, so I'm going to take my scissors and trim off the tips of those grassy bits, and I've cut a new piece here, and I'm going to put that into place right over where I had the other piece of grass, and you'll never know that I made a mistake and that I had to cover that up. Now, I could have gone ahead and cut this piece of grass with my Blueprints 13 rectangular stitch die like I did originally, but I got lazy and decided just to do it with a pair of scissors. So that's what I'm going to do here. So just make sure if you're putting anything on that surprise portion of the card that you don't let it block the easel mechanism. Otherwise, it's not going to be able to fold down properly. So that grass is now in place. It works as the easel stopper. It's still a little bit of interest even without the cow. So I still like it as the special surprise stopper. Okay, now I'm going to put in a sentiment, and instead of stamping it on a separate piece of cardstock and cutting that out and putting that on, I decided to get out my MISTI and use it to stamp my sentiment right on the pattern paper portion of the card underneath where the barn folds down. So I'm putting that in the corner of my MISTI, and I need a centering guide, and I should actually align it properly so that I can center my sentiment and make sure that it's straight. And then I'm going to go ahead and pick that up with the cover, and you can see I still have my stamps in the top there from where I stamped earlier. I used this same MISTI, and so I'm just going to take those stamps out just to make sure I don't get anything from them onto the barn. And now I'm gonna ink that up with my VersaFine Onyx Black ink and stamp it down, and it says from my barn to yours. And I like that it's not too distinctive. It kind of blends in a little bit, but you can still read it, and that's sort of the effect that I was going for. So let me take that out of the MISTI. You can see that when I fold down the barn, it is hiding that sentiment. And there is the easel portion at work with the surprise stopper and the piggy in the barn. So I hope you like this card, and I hope to see you over at my blog, mycasestudies.blogspot.com, and thank you very much for watching.